Welcome to today's Research Business Daily Report, where there are reports about corporations appearing to try to hire more analytics personnel at a more rapid pace than the extraordinary expectations of the market so far. And then an argument for researchers to stop fighting the government over data collection restrictions like TCPA, and instead to put our time, our money, and our effort into data collection innovation. RBDR is sponsored today and all this week by Socratic Technologies, whose proprietary tools and methodologies tackle marketing complexities so that you can make more confident business decisions. Co-marketingassociates.com's Crystal Vermis blog that Gartner's first half of 2015 survey is showing that marketers are relying much more on data. And that is leading to the hiring of many more analytically skilled individuals. The Gartner report says about 34% of the typical marketing budget is now being spent on analytics, and that percentage is 21% higher than it was 2 years ago. Christy Eubanks, research director for Gartner for Marketing Leaders, believes this means that HR departments are going to need to find new sources of analytic talent. 2 weeks ago, Vision Critical founder and President Andrew Reid authored a commentary for Advertising Age. It was titled, "Why the FCC Autodialer Ban Will Be Great for Innovation." The title itself is pretty self-explanatory, but in essence, Reid also wrote that researchers would be best spending their time working on ways to complete client projects without needing to rely on the telephone. Now, he's not talking about avoiding them entirely, but using them less than we are now. We spoke with Andrew on Friday and probed how that alternative research might be patched together, and if there is evidence that it will work.
I'm a big fan of the theory of constraints. I think if you look historically at when people take away something, it forces you to be more creative. I, for one, as a consumer, don't like being called. I thought about this to write the article. I mostly thought about the fact that I don't like being called, and there's got to be a better way. That was a long era we went through of telephone research. It went through its heyday, and let's eliminate as much as we can and try and find more creative ways to find, especially harder to identify sample groups or types of respondents. So that was some of my, I think, initial thinking that led to the article.
So I'm sure there are many people out there, particularly traditional researchers, who would say, hey, you know what? We have to fight it with the government because this is what we as an industry tend to do. We need to go back to them and say, no, you don't understand. We need to be excluded from these kind of regulations. But you sound like you're much more on an innovation bend than anything else.
Yeah, I think it's probably 70-20 or 70-30 or 80-20 in the fact that the innovation is the opportunity. And this is just mostly the way that I think about things and how I've approached our industry for a long time. Let's find ways to be creative. We've been able to reinvent this industry many times. Here's another chance for us to go and take a big step forward. Our industry is here to stay, and I much prefer to use our energy and resources in that direction versus trying to lobby people and convince the government for some short period of time that we belong in a special category that marketers don't belong in. I think it's a losing game long term. So that's my view, and I maybe have a unique position than others on that.
Okay, Andrew, you're a smart guy, and I don't think you'd be espousing these points of view if you didn't have an alternative ready to go.
The way that Vision Critical has approached market research and validating what we do online for a long time has been public opinion research. There was a study we were involved in the presidential election last time around. When we looked at the data, we found that we were as close, if not closer, than almost all the other pollsters, especially those that were using telephone methods. So, and that's always a good calling card. It's a good way to be able to prove that you've got something that's trustworthy and that people can stand behind. So I think what that says is that you can reach a lot of people leveraging the internet, leveraging social technologies. So I think it's those two, and I think in person, to a certain extent, is here to stay. I think you're going to see people stopping you at the checkout aisle and talking to you in malls. That is still a great way to do research. And I'll say one last thing, which I don't think we'll get rid of telephone research 100%. The stat I heard the other day was that 20% of all market research is still done over the telephone. So maybe we'll bring that number down to 5% or 4%. There's some things that we're still going to have to do, and those people will have to manually dial those phone numbers. But let's see if we can take the bulk of that information, the bulk of that 20%, and convert that to other means, leveraging more innovative approaches.
So overall, you don't think that there is any type of research out there, for instance, polling, that absolutely necessitates having to use the telephone?
I think any is a strong word. I'm sure there's some remote areas and there's some outliers. There always will be those outliers. Maybe not always, or for the next while there will be outliers. But I think as we're learning that there are other ways to be able to get a hold and talk to people. If you have a very specific, incredibly low incidence individual in a region, you may be forced to use the telephone as the only way to reach that person. And that's understandable. So I think the irony here is that we'll be using the telephone more than we ever did before. If you think about how we can use apps to communicate with people, texting, video is becoming hugely hot in our industry. So there's going to be a lot of ways that people actually use their telephone. We're just not going to use it in the analog way that we did in the past. So I think this is about leaving 1980s type methodologies in the past of how we reach people and leveraging sort of today and the future with how we're able to, I think, really bring our industry into the next phase and to continue the great success that we've had and will continue to have.
Thanks to Andrew, and that's your Research Business Daily Report. We've been sponsored by Socratic Technologies, whose proprietary tools and methodologies tackle marketing complexities so that you can make more confident business decisions. We encourage you to check out sotech.com to find out what an extraordinarily well-run research agency looks like. Who knows, they may be able to help you in a lot of new and unforeseen ways. Have a great research day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.